Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Martine's Musings. I'm your host, Martine Felton, and I want to welcome everyone for watching. And I wanted to, before I bring out my guest for today, I wanted to remind everyone about my latest book release, which is titled You Love, You Learn. And you can see the information scrolling right there at the bottom of the screen. It is a memoir of my self love journey as I went through a few toxic relationships. I share my growth. I share um, my lessons that I learned. I share journal prompts that will help you out and affirmations. And it's available on my website at martinefelton.com. And it's also available on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles and other online book retailers. So my guest this evening is a mindset coach by the name of Lucy Price. And thank you for joining me tonight, Lucy.
Thank you so much for having me.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Congratulations on your book. I'm really
Oh,
excited
thank
to scope it
you.
out.
Yeah, go check it out. Go check it out on my website. And if anyone, I forgot to mention, if anyone purchases the book off of my website, I sign it. So
Nice.
yeah, and it'll come directly from me. So let's talk about what you do, Lucy, and how you shine your light.
Yeah, absolutely. So, kind of already what you said, I'm a mindset coach. Some people
Mhm,
call me an empowerment coach.
mhm,
But really, what my passion is and what I love to do is I love to help people feel empowered within themselves and in their relationships. So, with my clients, we work through mindset, we work through the emotions, what triggers are coming up in relationships or within themselves, what stories are coming up for them,
mhm.
and really navigate it and create new patterns so that they can have the relationships that they desire and live the life that they want to live, feeling confident and empowered within themselves.
Oh, okay. That sounds like I feel like I could have used someone like you when I was going through the things that I went through as I was writing my books.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely could have used myself,
Yeah,
5 years ago. Absolutely.
yeah, because being in toxic relationships really
hmm
kind of messes with your mindset.
Yes.
How do you help your clients to shift their mindset?
Yeah, absolutely. So some of my clients come to me for different reasons. Some of my clients come to me from getting out of a toxic relationship or having a divorce or just being in this period of feeling really anxious when it comes to relating with other people or going out into the world and whatever it happens to be.
Mhm,
So the first thing I do with my clients when they come and start talking to me is I ask them first and foremost what is going on, like and by what is going on I mean, like, what are the emotions that are coming up in their body, what are the thoughts that they're having, what is the behavior that is being exhibited right now because of those thoughts, because of those feelings, whether it's conscious or not.
mhm,
So really, it's the first thing that I do with my clients is just take stock, what is going on right now and what has happened up until this point that has led us here. Because what has led us here isn't always going to be what gets us to where we want to be.
mhm,
And oftentimes it's not. So the first thing I do is just get a grasp of their situation, what they've been through, what thoughts are coming up for them, what patterns are coming up for them, so that we can see what there is even to shift. And then after we go through that period of talking about the behaviors, talking about the feelings, talking about the patterns that have come up, we determine what patterns are serving them, what thought processes that are serving them, and
mhm.
where they want to go, and what processes aren't. And the processes that are not serving them, we start to switch those thoughts around. And we start to learn the emotional intelligence to help back up those new thought and belief systems.
Right. Well, how would you in that instance, how would you get your clients to sort of start that process of self-love and
Mm.
self-care, how does that play into your process working with your clients?
Yeah. So in terms of self-love and self-care, what I try to look for from my clients is where's that coming from to begin with?
Hmm.
Because so much of us, like so many people in the world, we get love from other people. Like we don't necessarily give that love to ourselves.
Hmm.
And so the first thing I do is just kind of determine, okay, where are you feeling you're getting your validation from? Where are you feeling you're getting your love from, your care from? And is there anything that's blocking you from giving that to yourself? So most of the time if people aren't giving themselves self-love or the self-care, it's a lot of to do with they feel either they don't deserve it, that they're not worthy of giving
Hmm.
that self-love to themselves or that self-care, or they feel like they have to give it to so many other people
Yeah.
that there's nothing left. There's no
Right.
time to give it back to themselves.
Yeah.
And so in those moments, it's a lot of looking at the blocks, right? And looking at the reasoning and disproving the beliefs that you can't give it to yourself, or disproving the behavior of not giving it to yourself, because it's, at the end of the day, we hear it in society. I have a lot to say about society, but we do hear it in society of like of like you have to put on your own oxygen mask before serving others. We hear it in the
Yes.
airplanes. You have to put on your own oxygen mask before serving others, or you have to fill up your own cup before giving it to other people. But
Exactly.
that's not actually what society has brought us up to do. So we're getting the message that that's what we should be doing. But when you look at the structure of society, that's not what we're told to do. We're told to go to school, go to college, get a job, work
Work,
40 to 80 hours a week,
work,
and then
work till you die.
work till
Basically.
you die, and then maybe you get to retire, but who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah.
So most of the time, the people who come to me and we start having this discussion about self-love, the concept is there, but the application is not so much.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
yeah. And when what I say, like I did a post about this a little while back, I think, but there's a difference between education, information, and application, implementation. And I find that most people know how to care for themselves because they can care for other people,
Right.
but they're not applying that to themselves. For some reason, there's a disconnect in that.
And I feel like it's generational too.
Yes,
Like it's
definitely.
something that a lot of us are brought up that way,
Yeah.
especially me being a Black woman.
Mhm.
We are brought up to work, take care of your family.
Yeah.
And, you got to work extra hard to even be,
Yes.
noticed. So,
Yeah.
and we always forget about ourselves.
Yeah.
So I definitely think it's generational in the way in a lot of families as to how you were raised. If you were raised in a really maybe middle class or lower income family where it's all about hard work and
Yeah.
striving for better, we forget
Yeah.
to take care of ourselves.
I definitely think that it's generational. I also think it's
Mhm.
cultural,
Yeah,
as like
cultural as well. Yeah.
and experience, and you hit the nail in the head with your experience, right? Like being a Black woman, like, yes, there are so many places where having to work harder is a part of the experience and the self-love. And I can't speak to that situation specifically, but
Mhm.
my family were immigrants,
Mhm.
and so when we came over to America, the reason that we came over was to have a better life. And part of having that better life, that American dream, is
Yeah.
working really, really hard for it.
Mhm.
And so, I witnessed my dad go out every day working like 60, 80-hour weeks because that was the American dream, to have the better future.
Mhm.
And it's the narrative that's pushed for so many people, to work in order to have the end result. But but you never end up getting the end result because it's a fantasy. It's a fantasy narrative that we're sold.
Yeah, it's fleeting, and then the goalpost is always moving.
Yes. And you see it in schools today. Like I didn't take algebra until I was probably a junior in college, or not college, sorry, in high school. And nowadays that's being taught to middle schoolers. Like the guideposts are moving. There's so much more expected of the generations after us. And it's often something that's not talked about. And self-care and self-love isn't taught to children. And I think
Nope.
that's a real issue with society. We're taught to strive, but we're not taught to self-love. And that's why we see such a rise. I mean, for many other reasons, we can talk about like technology for children today, and how that has an effect on self-worth and self-love and, you know, just self recognition.
Yeah.
But even I went down a train of thought, but we're just not taught in school to regulate our emotions or to love ourselves or to have a positive mindset about ourselves, because there's always someone telling us to do better now that we're good enough.
Yeah,
right?
the society is not really set up for that.
Right. Yeah.
Like you said, it's not set up for that at all.
Yeah. And so like a lot of sorry, go on.
No, I was gonna say, so that is where, you know, we need to learn the self-love, of course. And what do you think about setting boundaries?
Yes. So one of the things that I share with my clients is too often we think about boundaries as being in regards to other people or other things. Like we're trying to make someone do something a certain way or trying to control someone else's behavior. But the way that I think about boundaries, and I think for me, I have found the most powerful way to think about boundaries is boundaries are all about people's access to you. So do people or things have access to your time? Do people or things have access to your energy? And you get to self-monitor that. And so when I'm talking to my clients and we're talking about boundaries, one of the first things or one of the first objections that I tend to hear is, well, the other person, you know, won't do that or won't, you know, let me do that or whatever happens to be. And so I kind of always take it back to the stance of, well, it's not about them. Like your boundaries are about you, and your boundaries are about if someone's going to have access to you based off of their behavior, sure, but it always comes back down to you. So that's how I view boundaries. It's all about access to you, your time, your energy, your money, whatever it happens to be, but you're the prize. You are the gift. You are the light. So if someone wants to have access to that, there's the boundary, you know, can they meet that? And the other thing I tend to say about boundaries is too often we make boundaries barriers. So boundaries have kind of been equated to barriers in a lot of ways of like,
it's really not. It's not a barrier. It's
right.
It's just being able to say, you know what, I can't help you right now, or I can't do that right now. Give me a moment. Give me some space, and maybe I can call you tomorrow. Or you know, it's just about, I can't help you right now, or I can't do this particular thing right now. Let me call you tomorrow, or maybe I can help you next time. It's not about just saying no. You know what I mean? It's about just practicing self-care and being like, you know, I have a lot on my plate right now.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this tomorrow, or can I help you tomorrow, or something like that. And,
absolutely.
And I think that you're right. A lot of times, you know, you see a lot of people talking about setting boundaries as just being a barrier and just saying no. And I think there's a lot more to it than that. I think it's, you know, a little bit more fluid than what is being put out there.
Yeah, I definitely think the way that I think about boundaries is like building a bridge. Like you're giving someone the opportunity to meet you in a place where both of you feel good and supported. And if someone's coming at you and basically being like, give me this, or I need to talk to you, or depleting your energy like consistently, and you feel depleted, you feel worn down, you're not taking care of yourself, you're not honoring yourself. If you're not honoring yourself and showing up in the way that feels good to you, what is the service? You know, because is the other person truly being served by you not feeling good about yourself? I don't think so, personally. And I don't think it honors anybody if you're showing up in a way that feels depleted and inauthentic and out of alignment with who you are and what feels good to you.
One of the things that I also like, I love your Instagram content when it has to do with, you know, your relationship content. And I really think it's really great stuff. And one thing I wanted to talk to you about is communication in
Yeah.
relationships, because I know that your clients come to you for a lot of different reasons, but at the end of
Hmm.
the day, it all has to do with how we move through relationships, whether that be romantic, friendships,
Yeah.
co-worker relationships. And so how would you say, if a client came to you with actual relationship issues,
Hmm.
communication issues, how do you deal with someone who's having communication issues in their relationship?
Yeah, so the first thing that I look for is what is beneath the communication issues.
Hmm.
So is communication issues not feeling like you can be open, that you can be vulnerable in expressing your thoughts, feeling emotions? If
Hmm.
that's the case, then we would look at, okay, what's blocking the expression? Is it that you don't have the words, you don't know how to structure it? Is it that you are triggered in the moment when you're trying to express your emotions, or you're afraid of what the other person will say or do?
Hmm.
So it's really about, with the conflict, what's coming up beneath that. But most of the time, if someone's coming to me and saying, I'm having these communications with my friend or my partner, or whoever it happens to be, I find it can kind of be tied back to a few key things. The first thing is the emotional state. So, what is the emotional state of both parties when you're having that conversation?
Hmm.
So often we enter into conversations and disagreements when our human isn't taken care of.
Yeah.
So, have you slept recently? Have you had food? Have you had water? Have you had space to breathe? So I bring them back to that point, because when your physical body, when your human is taken care of, you show up with a clearer mind and a more open heart to the conversation. And I
Yeah.
find that often people are trying to have big conversations in a short period of time when their human is not taken care of, or over text message or on the
Or
phone.
or in the heat of the moment,
Yeah.
in
Or
the
in the
heat
heat.
of the argument where you're
Yeah.
still angry or
Yeah.
upset.
Yeah, and so when that situation occurs, when it is the heat of the moment, I always guide people back to breath. And it's the cheapest thing you can do, in terms of, you just breathe in and out. Air is still free, the society hasn't capitalized on it yet.
Hmm.
So you get to take a breath and you get to breathe, and breathing, it calms down your nervous system. So it activates that parasympathetic nervous system. I
Hmm.
tell people to breathe, and it's the simplest thing to do. And it's also the thing that people just forget to do, or it's too easy. And I think that tends to be the thing. But when you can take a deep breath, and when you can come back to your body, and when you can just separate yourself just enough
Hmm.
from the emotion, you can enter the conversation from a clearer place. And so I really do ask, like, my clients, what is the emotional state that's going on? Like, what is the environment in which you're having this conversation? What are the different variables at play here? Because there's a difference in having an intense conversation when it's two people alone in a room after, first thing in the morning, haven't been to work yet, haven't done all these things,
Hmm.
versus at the end of the workday, when their bosses yelled at them, when they hadn't reached the deadline, when someone cut them off in traffic, when the kids are screaming and need dinner and need to go to bed, and all of these other things. So
Hmm.
I think sometimes we forget how much context has to play in terms of communication and the effectiveness of the communication.
Hmm.
So I tell people
True.
that,
That's true. That,
just
yeah, I like that. I agree with that, because communication can be affected by a lot of external things
mhm.
around you that actually don't have anything to do with
Yeah.
the thing that you're talking about or the thing that you're communicating about, but it can affect the way you communicate and the way you come off.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think one of the most, I'm just going to bring up the example of my partner and I,
Hmm.
because it's the one I can just speak the most to.
Hmm.
My partner and I, we really try to take ownership of when we lashed out in the heat of the moment.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is the similar thing of, there's a lot of different external variables that can cause you to lash out. I find that my communication with my partner has improved tenfold when I took ownership that I lashed out at him and he didn't deserve it.
Mhm.
Or, the reverse of that, when he said, I'm really stressed and I'm not coming into this conversation from a clear-headed place. I'm so open to having the conversation, but this is the background that's happening right now.
Right.
And so when people give you the context, because we're the main characters of our story. So if something happens, we think it's our fault. We think it's about us. We think it's directed at us, when for the other person, it could be all of these other reasons why they're lashing out or why they're saying something with so much emotional charge behind it.
Yeah.
It might not have anything to do with you. And
Yeah.
I think when parties, either in the moment or even if it's a little bit later, can take ownership of, hey, I was mean, I was mean. This happened just before we had this chat. I haven't eaten in 6 hours and I was mean, and I just want to own that. And, I care about you. I love you. And this happened. And it's one of those things that it's a small thing, but it has so much impact. And even though it's a small thing, it takes a lot of vulnerability and courage, I think, to actually do it.
Yeah, for sure. Someone just left a comment. Communication is key to a healthy marriage, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes. I think that also, since you brought up something personal, I can identify with my communication skills being a little off. Like if I'm going through something or if I'm pissed off about something and then someone walks in the room, like my daughter or my husband, and I'm frustrated about something that has nothing to do with them, and they ask me a question, that frustration is going to come up, and it might seem like it's towards them, but meanwhile, like you said, in the background, there was something else going on that was the point of my frustration. And then, then here they come and kind of get that external expression of, of it.
The internal manifestation. Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is one of those things that it just happens so frequently. It happens every day. I see it happen all the time. I'm at the grocery store, a woman's trying to check out and her kid is screaming, and then she snaps at the person who's trying to help her. Right. It's so common, but we always make it about us, or we always think it's about us, and not always, that always is a definitive word, but that tends to be the thing is we identify with the outward expression, as opposed to trying to put ourselves in their shoes of, okay, if I go and see my mom and she's, stressed with the laptop, and then I ask her a question in a similar way you explained with your kids coming into the room or whatever, and she snaps at me, I'm more likely to make it about me or to get pissed off that she snapped at me, rather than putting myself in her position and trying to regulate my emotions and have compassion for her situation. And so when we think about communication, emotional intelligence, it has to be there too. It has to kind of be in the conversation, because so much of good communication is good emotional regulation within yourself, and co-regulation if you have a child, for example, helping to regulate their emotions as well.
Absolutely.
So I say for anybody who's trying to communicate better, part of what I would recommend is how is your own emotional regulation? If you're pissed off in a conversation, can you regulate your own emotions? Take a few deep breaths, maybe walk out of the room. If you need to hit a pillow, go hit a pillow. If you need to express that emotion, do it in a safe way that's not hurting anybody else. Fair play. Go do that. I've definitely hit pillows before having an intense conversation with somebody. But if you can regulate your emotions, you're going to show up and communicate so much clearer than if you're just lashing out.
For sure. I definitely agree with that. And you, your website is Shift Your Story. And all of these ways, all of this emotional intelligence, how does that help you to shift your story? How would that help someone to shift their story?
So
if that makes sense.
Definitely. So For me, just some context around Shift Your Story. Like for me, Shift Your Story is all about, we all have stories. We all have stories in our lives of, I'm this kind of person who does this sort of thing. And so when I think of stories, it's the stories that we tell ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, oftentimes we hold on to these stories that don't actually serve us, the stories that we're not good enough, the stories that we are the kind of person that gets angry at everybody, or we're just hot-headed, we have a high temper. We attach ourselves to these stories about ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
or what other people's stories are about us. So we get attached to stories. Humans are storytelling creatures.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, the emotional intelligence and the mindset, really what that comes into play is being able to look at the thoughts, look at the beliefs you have about yourself and about the stories that you're telling yourself, and determine if they are true or not, if they are serving you or not, if it's what you want to embody or not. The emotional intelligence piece of that is we get attached. Humans are feeling creatures. Like if we think back to different memories we have in our lives, there's feelings attached to them. So we can't just change the thoughts. We also have to shift the feelings. We have to shift the thoughts and we have to shift the feelings, because the two of them together, that's what creates our behavior. Thoughts and feelings interacting with each other,
Mm-hmm.
then there's an outward exhibition of behavior. I'm not sure that was the right word, but outward expression.
I get it.
Yeah. So the emotional intelligence part of that is if you're telling yourself the story that you are a confident, successful, intelligent, beautiful human being, but you don't feel that way, then you're not going to believe it. You've got to get the feelings on board too. You've got to get the physical body on board too.
Right. I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. So how did you shifting gears here, and
Yeah.
how did you get into coaching? Because I know that you're younger, you're in your 20s.
Mhm. Yeah.
How did you get into coaching?
Absolutely. So I got into coaching in a little bit of a roundabout way, but also a common story that you hear from coaches.
Yeah.
I was in corporate America. I graduated college. I graduated with an acting major, and I went through this whole thing of, oh my goodness, everyone says that actors can't make money. And I attached myself to that story and that belief system.
Yeah.
And so I went through this phase of I need to get a corporate job. And in the past, I had marketing internships. Marketing and communications was something that I did throughout college. And so I got a marketing position. And I didn't know this at the time, but when I was interviewing for that position, there had been 6 people in that position in the 6 months prior to me interviewing.
Oh, wow.
Very, 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 very high turnover rate, like incredibly high and insane.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know that until I got into the job. And then I realized why it was that way. But in general, it was just not a healthy environment.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some people at the company that I really, actually really loved and really appreciated, because there were some moments that people would just like chat to me and really give me some really good advice while I was there. But overall, it was not a healthy environment. And I would look around and people looked sad. Like I couldn't explain it. People looked sad. People looked unhealthy. And I saw myself 20, 30 years from now. And I was like, do I really want this? Like, is this the life that I want? And I knew that it wasn't the life that I wanted. And so when I was at the position, I saved up a lot of money. I was still living at home at the time because I had only just graduated. And so I was like, I'm not sure this job is going to work out. So I'm not sure it makes sense for me to lease an apartment if my parents don't mind for a little bit.
Right.
And so I ended up just saving a lot of money and putting that towards a yoga teacher training. And so it ended up getting to a breaking point for me, and I put in my 2 weeks notice, and that was it. I then left and I got my yoga teacher training certificate, which led to a few other fitness certificates, and yoga and wellness was something that I was already interested in and already practicing, but I didn't think of it much as a career. So through that, I became a yoga instructor. I started teaching wellness classes, which led to health coaching initially.
Okay.
So then I started doing health coaching kind of on the side while I was teaching fitness classes and everything like that.
Right.
During the backdrop of all of this, all of the job transitions and the health coaching, I was going through my own series of relationships and navigating and learning how to communicate, learning how to set boundaries, learning what toxic relationships looked like and what healthy relationships looked like and what I wanted for myself. And that's where a lot of the drive came for me to shift into the mindset, the emotional intelligence, and the relationship aspect of coaching work. So that's my story.
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool. Because a lot of people who are coaches, I always find that they do come from corporate America,
Yeah.
backgrounds, and they just sort of have an awakening of some sort and, want to branch out on their own, do their own thing, or whatever the case may be, and just end up being coaches and, living their best lives and, and doing their thing. And I really, there's a lot of that going around. There's a lot of that. I don't think I've met a lot of coaches online just through, watching videos, content. And I think every coach that I know of has come from like a corporate background or some sort of professional background before they became a life coach.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it also makes sense, right? Because again, kind of going back to societal structure, this is the narrative of, go to school, get a job, get a well-paying job that's 9 to 5 and buy the house with the picket fence and have the kids and maybe retire. Like that's kind of the narrative that we're all in. And I think the beautiful thing is that coaches in a way have proved that it doesn't have to be that way. And it's not just in coaching. There's a lot of other work out there, passions that people can pursue that aren't the 9 to 5 job. So like if there is anybody who's watching this, who's in corporate, who does not like their job, who wants to get out of it, there's other paths for you.
Yes, it's not just coaching.
Yeah, it's not just coaching. There's other things you can do. You don't need to be a life coach. But also if you want to, that's totally fine.
Yeah. So what I usually ask all my guests this at the end, what are some of your self-care practices that you do for yourself?
Yeah, so I do a few things. I'm going to give you a few things.
Okay.
The first thing I do is I ask myself as consciously as I can remember how I am or what I need in that moment. So for example, like earlier today, there was a moment where I was just really lethargic. I was really tired. And because even when you do the work, you still have the thoughts pop in. And so I had the thought process go in of like, why are you being lazy? You slept in until 8:30, 9 o'clock, like you're fine. And I decided to stop those thoughts. And I started to ask myself, okay, what do I need right now? And I followed that intuition. If what I need right now is, okay, I think I need to just lay down on the ground and do nothing for 10 minutes, absolutely nothing, 10 minutes. That's what I need. If it's within my realm of possibility to do it, I do it. If I can't do that top thing, I do the next best thing. So I really try to ask myself as often as I can throughout the day, especially when I'm feeling stressed or sad or whatever happens to be, like, what do I need? Have I looked after my human recently? Have I fulfilled the basic needs of food, water, sleep, shower, whatever it happens to be? So that's part of my self-care practice. The other part of my self-care practice is to keep a journal of it's partly gratitude, but it's also partly successes. So if I feel like I just showed up in a way that felt good or felt successful to me, I
Mhm.
physically write it down. Part of the process or of why I started doing that is just the mind body connection and the recognition of when I'm showing up, and when I'm doing well. Because we also, we live in a society where we don't get acknowledged for when we're doing well, but we get called
Right.
out for when we're doing something wrong.
Yep.
And so I decided for myself that I wasn't going to do that. And I was just going to record as many successes as I could. And the success might be I ran a 5K or a 10K or something, but the success could also be I took a deep breath before I had a conversation with my boyfriend about the dirty dishes. Like
Mhm.
that could be the success. So I
Mhm.
start logging my successes and the things that I feel good about myself with. If I look in the mirror one day and I think, gosh, like I just have really beautiful eyes, I write that down.
Mhm.
And I express gratitude and love for myself in that way. Um, those are probably the top two that I've done recently in terms of self-love and self-care. Other than, of course, just like properly looking after myself and making sure like I'm eating well, I'm listening to the right things, I'm watching the right things, and by right things I mean things that will serve me, things that are not going to make me feel bad about myself. So I've stopped watching TV. I will not watch advertisements if I can help it,
Oh,
because most
wow.
of the time advertisements are there to make you feel bad about yourself so that you buy a product, so that you fix it, so then you feel bad about yourself later. And so
So
I
true.
yeah, so I really try to monitor what I'm taking in, because there's so much of the world around us that we're taking in and we don't notice because it's the subconscious brain.
Mhm.
So if I'm driving down the highway and if I start noticing signs for different things, I try to pull myself back to the road, because those signs are trying to sell me something. And oftentimes it's not something that I want to be sold to me.
Mhm.
And by that, it's not even the product, it's the story behind the product, it's the
Yeah.
narrative that they're selling behind the product, that you're not good enough, so buy this, as opposed
Mhm.
to a sense of desire or whatever happens to be. It's very lack based. So I'm really conscious of the content I'm taking in, because humans were physically designed to take in the world around us. We when we were back first on this planet, we needed all of our senses to be able to survive, to know if there was a bear around the corner behind that tree. And
Right.
so inherently our bodies are really well designed to take in a lot of information, but a
Mhm.
lot of the information is stored subconsciously. And so if nowadays we're living in a city with screaming advertisements telling us that we're not good enough, that's what's being stored in our subconscious. So I try to, as consciously as possible, make sure I'm taking in affirmations, making sure I'm listening to music that is supportive. I
Mhm.
try to steer away from music that's really about violence or,
Mhm.
diminishing women or whatever
Mhm.
happens to be, because I know that's going to my subconscious. So the
Okay.
other part of self-care is just really monitoring also the content that I'm taking in. And I think that's one of the things of self-care that people don't necessarily think of as self-care, because
Yeah.
we've been sold the narrative that self-care is a bubble bath on a Sunday, and
Right.
not that it's a daily
Exactly.
practice.
Exactly. Oh my God. That is because it's become so commercialized.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and mostly for women. And
Mhm.
and that's the interesting thing too. Like I have a couple male clients at the moment, and I had that conversation with a few of them. I think it was a couple weeks ago. Yeah, it was 2 weeks ago at this point, about just even the industry of self-care.
Mhm.
There's so many men out there that aren't taking care of themselves and don't love themselves, and we don't talk about it as a
Yeah.
society.
And
And
the healthcare industry doesn't speak to the men at all.
right. Absolutely. And so in general, I just think the narrative of self-care, it's so skewed. And to
Mhm.
some degree, you have to find out what self-care and self-love is to you.
Yeah.
But it's more than a bubble bath on a Sunday. It can totally be a bubble bath on a Sunday. Don't get me
Yes.
wrong. If
But
that's
it's
nurturing
more.
to you,
I
and if that
totally
allows you this,
agree.
yeah. But it's, for me, self-care is more the daily practice, the daily consciousness.
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely agree. So this has been really great. I wanted you to let everyone know if where they can contact you if anybody wanted to book you for a reading or
Yeah.
some type of clarity call or something like that. What are you offering in terms of your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few different ways that people can reach out to me. Any of them are fine. If you want to slide into my DMs, as they say, you can always message me on Instagram or Facebook, and just let me know that you found me here on this show.
Mm-hmm.
You can check me. I'll give you my handles at lucy.m as in Michaela.price. That's me on Instagram. My website is shifterstory.net. If you want to email me there, that's fine too. So those are the two ways to contact me. I think I'm more responsive and direct messaging, so I would encourage people to do that. But if you're more of an email person, you can definitely email me. That's no problem. And then the what I'm offering right now. So I do offer relationship breakthrough calls or self-love calls. So if you're going through a period where you're just struggling with some anxiety or some body images coming up for you and just your own feelings of confidence and empowerment, or you're noticing that your relationships aren't what you want them to be, you've had a series of toxic relationships recently and you want it to be healthy and expansive, I do offer some free 30-minute calls for that. So you can definitely reach out to me for those as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for, sharing your knowledge, sharing your wisdom on, all these various topics that we just talked about. And so, everyone that was watching, thank you again for joining me. You know where you can reach Lucy if you'd like to reach out to her, and you know where you can reach me at martinefelton.com to purchase my book or book me for coaching session and or tarot readings. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.